Good evening and welcome to Generation Movie on a Monday night, where one of the screens has immediately gone dark. There he is. My name is JW Colwell. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm joined as always by my good friend Rich Drees, and we have returning from her self-imposed exile, also where she was starring in multiple shows and all kinds of things.
Returning champion.
Self-imposed exile.
Self-imposed exile. You get back when you get a chance. You get back when you have time. It's not an insult. Self-imposed exile is correct in this rare case. Natasha Bogutzki, how are you?
Sabbatical. I'm well.
Sabbatical. Okay. So, I'm sorry. I'm in a dictator type of mood. Anyway. Anywho. Welcome to Generation Movie on Monday.
Elias and Rich is Chris over there.
I'm definitely not Barnes. I was thinking about that today. Like, nobody wants to be that fucking guy. Anyway.
Jeez.
So tonight we're doing Platoon, but let's talk about news and excitement or anything. As Rich tries to.
Do you want to flip me out?
Yeah, I'll flip you out. Holy shnikes.
Thanks.
And he's back. And he's back where he needs to be. Okay. Might need to turn you down.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're okay. Welcome on a Monday night in March. Natasha, good to have you back.
Thank you.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling about the Oscars? How are you feeling about everything that was going on?
I love the Oscars. I was having a great old powwow of a time.
I thought Conan did pretty well. We got a lot of reverb on Rich.
Yeah, hold on a sec.
Rich he's like the Hulk. He's struggling against the big rock behind him. What have you seen? Have you seen anything good? Have you seen anything you want to talk about?
No. Not really. So for full disclosure, I was attached to a very heavy play for a bit called Pillow Man. After that closed within 36 hours, I was on a flight to Rome. So I was gone there for a week. I came back. I've been here for like maybe a week and a half. I had like a week before the Oscars. And then I was gone again this past weekend to something out of state. And I just got back late last night. So I really haven't had a lot of time to sit down and catch up on anything except the Oscar movies right before the Oscars.
I'm working.
You have an echo.
Yeah, I'm working on the echo. I think I just fixed it.
Okay.
Rich, talk.
Hey.
There we go. Fine. Everything's good. Everything's great, and everything's good. Thank you for helping us, Ken. Comments. Good evening, lady and gentlemen. I resemble that remark.
Hi, Ken. Joe.
And Ken says, "Echo, echo, echo."
Who's the lady scenario?
I think you're technically the lady.
I know.
Although either Rich or I, depending on the day, can qualify. Depending on what we're talking about. Just being honest, I've seen how you react to the ending of certain, comic book movies. Anyway, as do I. I mean, I cried like a baby at the end of Terminator 2. Anyway.
I saw you cry like a baby at the end of No Time to Die.
I was upset. James Bond died. For fuck's sake. I've been watching Bond since I was 5 years old. Since like Moonraker. Moonraker played at my dad's theater in West Seneca Falls, New York. And I watched Moonraker 150 times.
Yeah, it was 10 or 11.
I saw I 10 or 11. Oh, wait.
No, I was 10 or 11 when I started watching Bond because.
Oh, okay. I was like, how are you 10 or 11? Wow, is there something I don't know?
My first film was Casino Royale, but I actually did not see my first Bond film in the cinema until Skyfall.
How do you feel? Because this is a good question for you. How do you feel about Bond now being owned by a Bond villain. Like, how do you feel about it?
Okay, there's an answer.
That is an answer without me saying anything. And anyone who knows the English colloquialisms will know what that means.
Let's talk about something I want to ask you both about, because I was thinking about this today. So
Okay.
have either of you did you get to see, first off, how was your night seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones? How's the theater?
It was wonderful. To fill everybody else in, there is a brand new rep theater in the little town of Wind Gap, Pennsylvania. It's kind of situated halfway between East Stroudsburg and Allentown. It's a small little, one screen, small house theater from the 1930s that they just recently renovated, and the person who runs it now is running it as a rep theater. They opened Friday night with, and everything is on 35 millimeter. They opened Friday night with a feature of Raiders and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And then their midnight screening was Eraserhead, which I did not stick around for because I was kind of tired out.
Seeing the greatest action movie of all time can do that to you.
Yes. Their calendar is amazing. If you've ever looked at the calendar for the New Beverly Cinema, the cinema that's owned by Quentin Tarantino in Los Angeles, it kind of gives that vibe. Lots of stuff. There were two different Lee Van Cleef features on Sunday. In the afternoon was a triple feature of his action movies, and then in the evening was a double feature of some of his westerns. If you are a John Carpenter fan, they have like 3 or 4 different nights where it's a double feature, a triple feature. One night is just Halloween. A lot of great stuff. Towards the end of the month, they have a Marx Brothers film, At the Circus. Not one of their best films, but it does have Lydia the Tattooed Lady. And so I might go for that. Lots of stuff. I look forward to going again and again and again, and to taking friends with me, like Natasha. We got to find a double feature or something to go down for.
She's so busy though. Like, she's super busy. I was looking at it.
I agree to the double feature of The Mummy at Mahoning.
That's true. That's true.
This is what this looks like. This Wind Gap Theater. I was looking at it like seeing RoboCop in 35 millimeter. Amazing. Look at that triple feature they got going on March 22nd. The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and They Live. Mm-hmm. I would be at this theater if I was still up in Pennsylvania. This would be an amazing place to go and hang out. But I hope they work out. I mean, if you start with Raiders and Indy, you're soft. You're soft in my heart. Let's talk about something I want to talk about. Speaking of reps, speaking of whatever.
About Breathless.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I did talk to the guy there, and they are going to have more French New Wave stuff in the coming months.
Okay, so everybody's happy.
That's one thing.
Did either one of you get to see Mickey 17 this week?
No.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this, and then I want to ask you guys a very serious question. First off, I didn't hate the movie. I think the movie's pretty fun. Pattinson's fantastic. Ruffalo's fantastic. Toni Collette's fantastic. Naomi Aki's great. And it's a fun little movie. It's not nearly as good as The Host or Snowpiercer or Okja or any. It's not on the same level. Mm-hmm. But here's my question to you guys, because I know as film people we get this all the time, right? And the question is, why doesn't Hollywood make more original stuff? Why do we get so many sequels and remakes?
Well, because of bean counters.
Because of bean counters, but also because the audience doesn't go.
That's true.
I think we have a real chicken or egg type thing going on in this world where somehow the audience thinks Hollywood's only making recycled shit. And then when Hollywood makes something new or original or whatever, we get a $19 million opening weekend on a $125 million film.
Yeah, but but most of the time, the original shit most of the time is something that has been rehashed or feels like it's just a replica of something else. Like most of the original films that we've seen recently that are expected to make any sort of blockbuster money are things we've seen like 1,000 times. You put Jason Statham in a movie, you know it's going to be an action Jason Statham film, even though it's an original story. Fuck off. It's John Claude
It's Jason
Van
Statham.
Damme of
No, Jason Statham is as close as we get to old timey rep cowboy movies. I'm okay with it. You get what you get. He's going to beat some people up. He's going to set someone on fire. Maybe throw somebody off a bridge. All of his movies have those elements.
It has to have a particular hook. And the problem is Hollywood has a hard time marketing the hooks.
Well,
the thing that bring people in.
That's an interesting thing because I don't know. I think Rich might know about this, but I don't know if you do. But you're bringing up the marketing. So this movie has been pretty well marketed as to what it is. It's it's a cloning kind of movie. Obviously not Multiplicity, not a straight comedy, but like a sci-fi satire type thing. I think like the way I describe it is I feel it's like Gattaca and Brazil had a baby.
I like that.
It's close. You know what I mean? Like it's not as nearly as sharp as Brazil or again any of his other older movies. Like The Host, I really love. Okja, I really love. You know what I mean? But I came out of it going, this movie's pretty great, and nobody's gonna go see it. And even though the audience was laughing, everybody left happy in the theater. I'm a big believer in this concept that the audience is causing us to not have original movies.
I think this movie came out at the wrong time.
There's nothing out, Natasha. It had a wide berth. There's like we're in the 4th week of fucking Captain America, and theaters are dying for product.
They are dying for product, but Bong Joon-ho. When people think Bong Joon-ho, Okja, yeah. The Host. Honest, I didn't even fucking know he did The Host. So the things I think of when I think of Bong Joon-ho, Parasite and Snowpiercer. That is it. Which means that he either does something incredibly heavy or something incredibly layered. And we are just post the Oscars, which means people want a little bit of a break from things that are incredibly layered. They want something either a little lighter or a little more action related as a palate cleanser because we are post.
Interesting. But I see the thing I have though, Rich. I have a constant fight with people. There are 3 or 4 people that constantly need me. Like, when is Hollywood going to give us something original? And this is original. And then I explain to the people. I usually explain my theory. My theory is not that studios don't make original product out of necessity. They make it out of necessity. IPs are easy to market. And here's the funny thing: you were talking about marketing, Natasha. The greatest thing ever. There's this guy named David Zaslav, and he's the biggest tool in Hollywood, and everybody knows it. And in a year when they have some of the most challenging films and the most expensive films in Warner Brothers history, he fired the entire marketing department. So it's a really weird. It's just a terrible thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now it's funny that we talk about the collision between original stories and IP driven material, because and this is me segueing into something I did watch this weekend. That's the kind of the core conflict in the first episode of the upcoming Apple TV Plus series, The Studio, with Seth Rogen. The first episode did premiere at South by Southwest this past weekend. I got a chance to watch the entire 10-episode run of the first season. and it's honestly one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. Just absolutely hysterical. It's about people's insecurities in their job, and the absurdities that they sometimes have to deal with. It's fantastic. I loved it. It's hilarious. In that first episode, Rogan plays a mid-level executive at Continental Pictures, and he, when his mentor, who's the head of the studio, gets pushed out, he gets the job, based on the caveat from his corporate overlords that he can figure out a way to make Kool-Aid the movie, because they just got the IP rights to Kool-Aid. And one of the first people he loves movies, so he wants to help filmmakers make good films as well. And to that end, he meets with Marty Scorsese, playing himself. And Scorsese is like really super psyched about wanting to do this idea he's had for a while about the Jonestown massacre. And suddenly he sees a way that he could perhaps merge the corporate mandated Kool-Aid movie with the Jonestown massacre story.
Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Yeah, and then, you know, but there's so much more through the whole series. It's really good. Ike Barinthal is in it. Catherine O'Hara plays his former mentor. She shows up in a number of episodes. Gosh, it's just so damn funny. If I didn't have a whole bunch of stuff to watch and write about over the next week or so, I probably would go back and just give the whole thing a complete rewatch. The cinematography on this thing is amazing. Some amazing camera work on this, including one shot in one episode. I think it's either episode 5 or 6, where I literally had to rewind it 3 times and went, okay, technically I know how they did this, but this is still insane how they did this.
I'm on rewatches right now of Angel, since I haven't watched it in probably over a decade, and
it's the premiere. It's the anniversary of the premiere of Buffy today, actually.
Yes, that is something I was also going to discuss. Natasha, how do you feel about the Buffy reboot? Are you excited? Are you scared?
I'm not scared.
You got a cat behind you?
Yes.
Hi, Arthur.
Just accidentally woke him up from a very deep sleep. I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, you were terrible. I saw you playing with him, and then now he's up. How could you?
And
he's gonna hang for a while.
Meet the world meet Arthur.
Hello, Arthur.
my boy.
He's like, I'm gonna go trying to find a place to sleep. Maybe right here.
So I'm not scared. I love Chloe Zhao. I know, come at me. I loved Eternals. I fucking loved Eternals. I don't care what you want to say, and I don't have to explain myself on this.
I think it's funny because at one point Chloe Zhao was talking about doing a vampire movie, and then it just kind of mutated, and then it became this project instead. And I was like, okay,
I'm less.
My thing is,
the Whedon thing is a terrible thing, a terrible blemish on an incredible bunch of shows, right?
So,
but Frank Kazooie being back is good. I like that. I like that the old timey, sand dollar people are back.
Sarah Michelle Gellar has stated for fucking ever that she would not be participating in any Buffy project that wouldn't do right either by the character and or by the fans. And she put out a big long post the day after the news broke.
I think I think it's a pretty good thing.
If she thinks that this project is good enough to stand behind it and put her seal of approval on, I will even be a part of this, it gives me great faith because
as long as Sarah Michelle Gellar isn't on Stupid Wolf Show anymore, I'm good. I don't even call it by the title of the show. I just call it Stupid Wolf Show. It was so bad.
I just
Just as a point of order, though, on the Kazooie's involvement, they're the ones who directed the original movie with Christy Swanson, and because of that, they got an executive producer credit on the TV series. They actually had no involvement outside of cashing their checks every week, which is fine because I think what they did with the material wasn't good. But they're kind of entitled because they're the ones we created the TV show or the movie that the TV show spun off from.
Interesting.
If they're involved, that just might be a contractual thing hanging over from the 90s. But I don't think they're going to be involved in the creative end, and hopefully maybe some folks like Marty Noxon will come back. So that'd be fun.
I love.
I think she is involved. I think.
Good.
In finishing up the marketing versus whatever, I was looking at. So, the guy that got fired was the guy that was the champion of. Basically, he was the champion of Barbie. He did the marketing for Godzilla and Kong. He did the marketing for Beetlejuice, and Twisters. And they fired that guy. And these are some of them. That's not a great idea. Also, he did some of the marketing for Dune, which is so maybe the popcorn bucket. I don't know. But basically, they fired him. And these are the movies. Listen to these movies, and listen to the amounts of money Warner Brothers is spending. They just released Companion. Mickey 17 cost $118. Barry Levinson's gangster movie with Robert De Niro, Alto Nights, cost $45 million to make. We have the Minecraft movie, which cost $90 million to make,
which is gonna be a
Sinners, and $90 million also for the big budget vampire movie from Ryan Coogler. Let's see what else. Superman, of course, has a mega budget, but that's one of the only movies that they're confident is going to be, pretty big. They also have Paul Thomas Anderson's untitled Leonardo DiCaprio film, which cost $130 million and needs to make $300 million at the box office to break even because of the profit points. They also have Maggie Gyllenhaal's $80 million Frankenstein spinoff, The Bride. They also have $300 million racing drama from Joseph Kosinski and Brad Pitt, F1.
That I'm looking forward to.
It looks really good. I have no problem with how that movie looks. But what I'm saying to you is, this is a very big. These are not easily marketed movies. A 1940s set vampire movie in the Bayou South, directed by Ryan Coogler, is not an easy marketing. I love that Zaslav always steps into these things, and
I disagree on that. I think that one's going to be very easily marketed, and the reason why it's going to be marketed well is it has Ryan Coogler as at your helm, which means that's a POC color story, and then you're coming off of currently right now doing very well, I might add, in the new Interview with the Vampire TV series. Yes, it doesn't have the Anne Rice Interview with a Vampire behind it, but it can work off of the same style.
I think it's I'm excited about it. You're excited about it. Rich is excited about it. I don't know that it's an easy sell to fly over country. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you could use some really good marketing people, and you decide to fire the guy that opened Barbie and made Barbie one of the biggest hits of all fucking time. It's dangerous. And you have something like Mickey 17, which I think is a funny movie, but nobody knows what the fuck it is. I said I went to see Mickey 17, and somebody's like, is that like a Sarah Michelle Gellar movie? Not a Sarah Michelle Gellar. Is that a Sarah Jessica Parker movie? Is it she's dating a lot of Mickeys? And I was like, what the fuck? Anyway, Okay. Let's get-
one more thing
Sure.
before we do get to Platoon. I don't know if you saw that earlier today. It was announced that Stanley Jaffe had passed away.
I
he
didn't
was
see that.
He's a former Paramount executive who became a producer. As a Paramount executive, he greenlit Love Story and a little movie called The Godfather. He won an Academy Award as the producer of Kramer versus Kramer. And he also produced Fatal Attraction, The Bad News Bears, the original one, and a number of other films.
The good one. The good one.
Yeah, he was very influential in his day, and gave us a lot of some great quality art to enjoy. So thank you for that.
84. He was 84 years old. He was the head of Paramount by 29 years old. That's fucking crazy. That's insane. I didn't see that. That's amazing. He had some really great movies. Kramer versus Kramer, pretty good. He basically emulated his entire career, it says in this, on Sam Spiegel. Like, that's an amazing kind of person to emulate. That's another loss. Like, we've lost some really big producers recently. People who were responsible for some of the best movies the world has ever seen. Fatal Attraction also high on Jaffe's list. Putting a plug into that zeitgeist in 1987 with how dangerous relationships were. Let's talk about Platoon though. Speaking of 1987, which is when this movie started hitting it big. It did open in 86, but let's talk about production. I did not know a few things about this movie going into today. I found some things out.
I'm going to be fair. You're the research guy. I didn't look it up. I just watched it.
Well, I do the research. I'm so glad that I'm the research guy. I'm the nerd.
You can be Giles.
I can be Giles. Yes, somebody go out and go out and kill a vampire.
That is a compliment because Giles is the hottest guy on the show.
That makes you Xander. Is what that makes you.
That makes me the Zeppo. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'll be cordial.
Anyway.
Actually, no.
So, did you guys know that? First off, one of the more interesting little tidbits you come up with so Oliver Stone originally wrote this as a book, right? He wrote the story of his life, and it was called Break, semi-autobiographical, about his experience with his parents and time in Vietnam War, and how it was a big change in how he viewed life and the war after, right? But he never really tied anything together. But he did send the script set to the music of The Doors to Jim Morrison. Now, here's where it gets weird. When Jim Morrison died, he had the Break manuscript on him when he passed away, and it was brought back to Oliver Stone by the person who was part of Jim Morrison's, I think his manager, returned the script after Morrison's death. And that Morrison was reading the script and actually contemplating whether or not he wanted to do it. And so even though Break was never produced, it eventually becomes Platoon. It eventually becomes Platoon when he basically, makes a couple movies, gets some success, starts working on a screenplay, a movie called The Cover-Up, and then he eventually, breaks the Break screenplay into working with Martin Bregman and Sidney Lumet. And if at the time when he sold the Break script, it was going to go to Sidney Lumet and Al Pacino. But then he got hired to write Midnight Express in 1978. That movie did very well. And then other studios were like, they weren't on board with Vietnam War movies because they were super unpopular, except for Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. And once those movies came out, so first off, he had a two-pronged problem, which I thought was great. Nobody wanted to do Vietnam War movies before Apocalypse Now and The Deer Hunter came out. And then nobody wanted to do Vietnam War movies after Apocalypse Now and The Deer Hunter because they were so well received. So it's like
It's a lot of pressure.
it's a lot of pressure, and
Yeah.
so you're dealing with one of the more unpopular wars around the world, and then he comes in, and the two movies that are like considered pinnacle movies get made, and his screenplay is still sitting there. And then he gets the call to write. He gets the call to write some other scripts. He starts, trying to. He figures out the idea that he's going to break into mainstream directing by directing a horror film. Surprise, surprise. He makes a movie called The Hand, which is a terrible Michael Caine movie, and it's awful, and it's just a bad movie. And then the same year he writes Year of the Dragon, and that movie gets produced and made by Michael Cimino, and and so him and Michael Cimino become friends. And then Michael Cimino attempts to produce Platoon in 1984, but Michael Cimino has problems because he makes a movie called Heaven's Gate. And so they don't want to put a lot of money into it, and there's all kinds of like behind the scenes craziness about the script that eventually Break becomes Platoon, and Platoon gets sold then gets sold to Dino De Laurentiis. But when they go to get the production money and they go to get the okay from the U.S. military, the Department of Defense refuses to support the script for its depictions, the highly unfavorable depictions of the American soldier, because of the drug abuse, because of the majority, basically training the majority of American soldiers as illiterate delinquents, which was the direct quote in the script, in the letter from the Department of Defense, and that it also was perpetuating horrible racist attitudes about African American soldiers. Then De Laurentiis gets the financing. Everything goes great, but he can't find a distributor. Fantastic. Stone needs more money, so he writes Salvador. And it goes to Hemdale. Hemdale then, once they make Salvador, they look at the script of Platoon, and that's how the movie gets made. Hemdale is one of those companies that is barely noticeable. It's a blip on the radar of movie making. But it made some really great, underrated, like movies like Platoon, movies like Salvador, really gritty, not necessarily American financeable movies. And I found that so interesting in that he needed all of this, everything needed to come together for him to find the exact proper place to get it made and marketed. And just somebody that was willing to give him a $6.5 million budget. That's how much it cost. $6.5 million.
Not bad.
That's crazy, Rich.
With
crazy.
the inflation rate, did you happen to look that up or no?
No, I have information. We'll get there when we do box office. It'd probably be about like 30, 35. But once you get into the box office, we'll talk about it when we get there. Once you get into the box office of it, doesn't really matter because we're going to talk about numbers tonight when we get to box office. Rich and I have been watching a lot of old movies where movies make 23 times their budget. Rich, 25 times their budget, 100 times their budget. Lawrence Arabia was like 45 times, but some ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, but at the time they didn't have as much content being released.
Yes, but still, the only time you see that kind, and Rich and I have been discussing this for a while, that's the only time you see the kind of ridiculous returns on investment. It is the older movies. You're right, not as much content, certainly not TV, certainly not streaming, but the return on investment for like major motion pictures from like 1980 on, Rich, we're saying like 4 times its budget.
Yeah,
but movie makes 4 times its budget. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking entirely different types of environments for distribution. Back then, in the 60s or 70s, a movie could stay in the same theater for, not just 4 or 5 weeks before, a home video release and then
2
cable.
months.
These things would stay in for like 17 weeks, 25 weeks. There is a theater, one of the theaters that I went to in my youth in Harrisburg. I was doing a little reading about it. When it first opened in the mid 60s, it was a twin theater. It opened with one screen showing Sound of Music for 2 solid years.
I hate that movie so much.
I know you don't like that movie, but
I really
I find it fascinating that you could have one theater and just for 2 years straight go, hey, you know what? I want to see Sound of Music again. Boop. Let's go
Take
over
a walk
to
in the theater.
your twin.
You mean we're not going to stream it? That's the most interesting part of the production for me is that like they eventually get to the Philippines, right? They eventually film with in the Philippines that is only minorly held up by Ferdinand Marcos getting deposed out of his country. Shooting lasted 54 days. Cost $6.5 million to make. The production made a deal with the Philippine military for use of all military equipment and uniforms because the Department of Defense refused to give them historically accurate equipment and uniforms. That is why this movie looks. The uniforms look significantly different from other American war movies, right? The way they look, the uniforms, like the patches on like different arms, and it's a real interesting little thing that you don't get unless you know a little bit about the production. Then we have casting, wacky casting all over the place. James Woods was originally he was offered the role of Barnes. I could see it. But he turned it down because he said, I can't face going into another jungle with Oliver Stone. Denzel Washington.
He just did El Salvador.
He had just made Salvador, right? And so Denzel Washington was up for the role of Elias. I totally can see that.
Yeah.
Totally can see that. And it would have brought that star quicker. He would have been quicker because it took him another 3 years before Glory, right? That would have been a much quicker movement of that particular megastar, right? Because he would have done well. I think he would have done well with the role. Other people up for the role of Barnes: Mickey Rourke, Emilio Estevez, which would have been really interesting playing against his brother, and then Kevin Costner. But Costner withdrew after he read the script because he had what Stone, describes as like an emotional breakdown after reading the script because his brother had passed away in Vietnam. So like Costner was out after that, but he was up for the role of Barnes.
I can't see him in that role to begin with.
I know. People up for the role of Chris, originally Keanu Reeves. But again, he couldn't get over the script being so violent. And he had nothing, he wanted nothing to do with it, which is interesting now because he's John Wick.
It's a different type of violence. It
is a totally different type of violence, but I'm
stylized.
I'm making a snide remark.
Yeah.
Snarky is what I would say. Shocking. Snidely. Shocking. Anyway. Also, Kyle MacLachlan, your favorite Twin Peaks detective, was also up for the role of Chris, but he also was, he didn't get the role. And then Charlie Sheen got the role because Willem Dafoe had worked with him on something else, some other low-budget movie, and enjoyed it, and said, I think we could work with him. It has 2 cameos in the casting as well. Oliver Stone, of course, plays one of the commandant lieutenants or major lieutenants who are part of the 1968 New Year's Day battle. He gets blown up by a North Vietnamese kind of like kamikaze pilot-ish kind of thing. And then Dale Dye plays Captain Harris in the movie. The commander of Company B is also the same guy that is the film's technical advisor and also the person that put all of the cast and crew through a 30-day military training regimen. They limited food, water, when they could eat, when they could drink, when they could sleep. They fired blanks, set off mortars that were supplied by the special effects department, and basically made them crazy.
I heard he worked on a lot of things, including Band of Brothers.
He's actually, if you pay attention, Dale Dye's and he's in a lot of things where you look up and you're like, holy shit, he's in a lot of things. Like I was looking him after I was reading some of my research, the stuff that he's been in and the different things that he's done, like his military service is one thing, but he became like the de facto technical advisor for military things. Like even on like the list of movies that he was in or had some sort of attachment to. Listen to this: Platoon, The Beast, Always, Born on the 4th of July, Casualties of War, Firebirds, JFK, Under Siege, Heaven and Earth, Guarding Test, Natural Born Killers, Blue Sky, Puppet Masters, Outbreak, Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, Sergeant Bilko, Mission Impossible, Starship Troopers. Like he's and
Actually,
Saving Private Ryan. He's an incredible, very talented person that also would be very part of like helping people get the military everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. He's still alive. He's 80 years old. He's 80, almost 81. He'll be 81 in October. So he served years of service in the military, 64 to 84. He's actually one of the most decorated people, but he's just somebody that's everybody went to. He even does video games. He's been the technical advisor for military video games since the beginning of the Call of Duty's franchise. So he is somebody that has touched all areas of military entertainment in every conceivable. So they filmed for 54 days. Only cost about $6.5 million. They shot in Mount Myking, Laguna for the forest scenes, Cavite for the river and village scenes, and Villamore Air Force Base near Manila for all of the military scenes. And then Dale Dye himself is the only person that also he helped Oliver Stone write the novelization of the movie. So not only is he a talented advisor and a really good actor, he's really good in the roles he has. All these movies he's been in as like military advisors and stuff. And then he is also a very good writer. So he's one of the pleasant finds in this research on production. And then of course the last thing to talk about production wise, it was widely incorporated as one of the best soundtracks that they were able to release. It has Groovin' by the Rascals, Sitting on the Dock of the Bay by Otis Redding, Tracks of My Tears, of course, by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles,
White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane,
by Jefferson Airplane, Okie from Muskogee, although that is one of the biggest technical flaws in the movie, because Okie from Muskogee was released in 1969, and the movie takes place in 67, 68.
Yeah.
So, but that's the production. There's no stories except people not wanting to work with Oliver Stone again. The biggest thing about the production was that this movie started in his head in 1969 when he got out of it, tried to get it to Jim Morrison to set his movie to the Doors, which would have had like a very interesting kind of like effect. It would have been a totally different movie, but it would have had the same similar themes and everything running through it, but with Doors music.
I'm so sorry. I'm freezing right now. That's why I pulled.
That's okay. I was thinking to myself, I need to get a blankie for the episodes with Rich too. He's,
Wow,
that hurts. Okay. So box office. Let's talk about how a movie opens and how it gets released. It was released in the United States on December 19th, 1986. Of course, Rich and I know this as what, Rich? Why does a movie get released on December 19th, 1986? Why would it get released on December 19th, Rich? In the old-timey 1980s Oscar days.
Yes, obviously this was being positioned by the studio.
New York and LA. Yeah, New York and LA. Yeah.
That's their Oscar.
So it opens 1986. Oh, let me change I already changed it. Anyway. And then it also opens in the Philippines on the same day, and then it opens in the United Kingdom in March 1987. And basically it had trouble getting through the boards, the ratings boards in some countries. These numbers are astounding. Listen to this. Hold on. Okay. Movie opens like I said, December 1986. Opening weekend gross is $241,000. Nothing, Rich. It opens to nothing. It opens in 6 theaters, opens $240,000. There's about $40,000 a theater for the week. Not a lot. It eventually gets to 1,560 theaters by the middle of 1987. Therefore, it lasts almost 16 weeks in theaters on average. It lasts an average of 10.72 weeks than any theater was ever booked in. And that's where it gets really interesting, Rich. So the budget is $6.5 million, like we said. The domestic box office gross of this movie, including international, is $137,978,000, $138 million.
Yeah.
Rich, the worldwide box office is 23 times the production budget, Rich. Which you and I know that is something reserved for when you and I do old-timey 50s, 60s, 70s movies. I'm serious. Like, think about it. We talk about most of the movies we talk about from the 80s, the production budget versus gross, 4 times its production budget, right? This is 23 times its production budget, which puts it on par with the movies we were discussing the last couple weeks. Bridge on the River Kwai, Lawrence of Arabia, these massive movies that did very well with roadshow productions, right? This movie does it. And this is where it gets really fun, numbers-wise. I love numbers. The film expands from 214 theaters to 590 theaters in its 7th weekend in release and becomes the only movie in United box office history to become number 1 at the box office in its 7th week in release. Crazy. And then it gets interesting. It remains number 1 for 4 more weekends. So it's number 1 in week 7 to 11 in the box office. Night weekend, it outgrosses its 7th weekend by $5 million.
Yeah,
So
I mean, usually we see drop-offs there. I have to imagine, though, that so much of this, was the theater count the same, or was there an increase in theater counts, or was this all simply driven by the Academy Award nominations and people going, oh, shit.
It eventually they make more prints, is what I think is what happened, would be my guess, right? The idea that a lot of these movies, when they were trying to win Oscars in the 80s, there simply weren't enough prints to get around the country, right? So I would imagine that Orion, by the way, great seeing an Orion logo on any movie. Fantastic. I loved Orion when it was a working studio.
Well, you're welcome for everything on this film.
There you go. It increases, Rich. It goes from 590, and Natasha, it goes from 590 to 1194 on the President's Day weekend, which we just had, right? We just had a couple weeks ago, and becomes the first movie in the history of the box office receipts to gross $10 million in a February weekend. Crazy. Just the numbers thing is crazy. Any guesses, Rich, on a $138 million film, what the updated box office is for adjusted for inflation, Rich? Any idea?
138 million probably is about 600 million.
400 million.
I was going to say 300. I was going to say about 300.
Like 400 million is where it would be.
What were you saying?
I was going to say roughly around 340 million.
Yeah, it just, but to put it in perspective. Well, no, but that's yeah.
I know inflation.
She wins.
Price is Right rule.
Yeah, she wins. She wins by the Price is Right rule. She did not go over, and I was going to say $1, but don't judge. So that is some really interesting box office. Like the idea that it wasn't number 1 until its 7th week in release. And then in its 9th week in release, it grosses $12.9 million when it finally hits 1,194 theaters, and it becomes the first movie in the history of box office to ever gross more than $10 million in February, which I was told by somebody else who fancies themselves some sort of a movie person that no good movies get released in February anymore, which I thought was, I was like, okay, whatever.
I would say they're not completely wrong on that.
They've been wrong on that for about at least 10 years. They've been wrong. I'll tell you when they've been wrong. They've been wrong on that. Actually, I'm wrong. It's more years. They've been wrong about February movies getting releases. I would say where it really started to turn was 94, not 94. Silence of the Lambs. Whatever year Silence of the Lambs came out, that was released in February on St. Valentine's Day weekend.
89?
No, I was only.
No, it's not 89. 91? 91.
I was only
91 at the latest.
Yeah,
Sorry.
91 was Silence of the Lambs, but that was when studios were starting to figure out that, first off, President's Day weekend was a good movie going weekend. Also, Valentine's Day weekend was a great date weekend. That was when theaters started realizing that they could if they put movies out there, people would go see them. So I'd say 91, but I was having a fight with somebody who was like very, very confident in the idea that no good movies get released from January to April, and I was trying to explain to them that hasn't been the case for a long time. It used to be the dregs. We used to, when we get to January and February, I'm going to be honest, when I ran Endless Mountains Theater, we would get to January and February and be like, the fuck are we going to do? Let's get a lot of heart. Let's have a laugh.
January is Oscar catch-up time for me.
Well, no, I think it's become Oscar catch-up time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always that way. And then, in recent years, like after 91, when they realized Silence of the Lambs, I think, grossed $21 million in its opening weekend, and it was Valentine's Day weekend. I remember that vividly because my dad was like, I can't believe this movie's going to do this much money. Like, he was just sitting there going, this is crazy because it's the scariest fucking movie I've ever seen. And he's like, people want to be scared. It's going to be good. We're going to have it's a good popcorn movie, as my dad used to say. Anyway.
Yeah, take your girlfriend to see Silence of the Lambs for Valentine's Day.
Everybody wants a good woman suit.
And then she gets a basket full of lotion.
Else she gets the hose again. Anyway.
That's perfect for Valentine's Day. You get lotion.
Perfect. It is at its heart a romantic movie. It is a love story. But this is what we're talking about. Critical response then and now. I'm gonna let you guys talk. I've done all the production in the box office. You guys tell me what you're thinking on this movie. Because this is what you did say you watched it, right, Natasha?
Of course I did.
Okay. Let's go. What do you got?
All right. Rich, you first.
Okay.
I gotta adjust the blankie first.
I hadn't watched this in forever, so it kind of played mostly fresh for me again, which was nice, actually. And I mean, it's the quote about Oliver Stone saying this is about America losing its innocence and what war does to people and stuff like that is kind of fresh in my mind. And yes, it's very much that movie, and maybe on certain levels, not so fucking subtle about it. But I think at the time, even coming on the heels of Apocalypse Now and what was the other one? I'm sorry, I'm just totally blanked on
Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter. Yeah, we had this. We had Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket the following year. We had Hamburger Hill right around this time.
A fantastic movie, Rich. Fantastic movie, Hamburger Hill is.
Yeah,
I said not.
Really
I did not say anything to the contrary to that statement.
Oh no, I want it out there that I've said Hamburger Hill is a great movie that everybody should see. Okay. It's a really good movie.
I think there was a time where, in the midst of like the Reagan's America, we were suddenly having a moment where we were looking at what we were doing in El Salvador, some of our foreign policy, and we're like, oh yeah, remember when we tried to intercede in Vietnam and it did not go well? And we're still wrestling with this, reckoning with this, dealing with the fallout for the veterans who were very much scarred by this. And I think it kind of spoke to that moment. And dare I say, it's still, I think, kind of is resonant about certain things, even now, about the inhumanity of war, which is kind of a universal theme. You can apply that to any movie. And even with those couple of films beforehand, looking at this now, this is very much not the kind of war movie you would see John Wayne star in, 30 years earlier, anything like that. This is very much.
Well, a lot of those movies were very pro-war, where
They're jingoistic. They're very
jingoistic is the word I was just gonna say, Rich.
Yeah,
they're jingoistic.
I feel like Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now, and Platoon are very. They're not pro-war, but they're not anti-war. What they are is they are
pro-reality.
They're pro-reality,
Yeah.
pro.
I
humanity,
think though it's really interesting.
Loss of humanity.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Pro-apathy.
I think.
I guess you could say.
Yes. Yeah. Pro-empathy, even.
To show the realism of that situation.
I think this movie and the other movie that it has a lot in common with is Casualties of War, right?
The Michael J. Fox film.
Michael J. Fox, Sean Penn movie, where you clearly have delineated. I called the episode today the Elias-Barnes episode, right? Where you're just trying to, because they have the Christ-like figure Elias, and they have Berenger, who's kind of like he's the moral like morally ambiguous. I don't care about other races, people. I care about myself. I care about my country. I want everybody out. If I have to break a few eggs to get where I'm going, whatever. It's like he's the dark version of a John Wayne character, right? He is what you get when you put a John Wayne character into a morally repugnant space and just allow him to kind of stick his tentacles out, kind of like ingest other people.
But also what I think is interesting about this film is, and I think this is something that some of the other films don't do so much or don't touch on so much, it's a film about class in America. Whereas, the Charlie Sheen character is very much a, he says he's a rich kid who dropped out of college because he wanted to fight and, and everything.
David Keith's like, you're one of them crazy people.
Yeah, and for a lot of the other soldiers, they're from poor backgrounds. And this is like the only, kind of way they could earn some money. They didn't really have much of a choice. They might have even been drafted for some of the, so they didn't have that idea of a, education deferment or, be rich enough to have a doctor who could lie that they had bone spurs or something like that to get them out of the draft.
That sounds like a pretty.
Yeah. So and as I was thinking about that while watching this, I realized Charlie Sheen and Oliver Stone flip that dynamic on its head for Wall Street, where Charlie Sheen is a poor kid who goes and suddenly finds himself in the world of the rich people and is seduced by the madness to be found there as well. It was really, it was a very interesting mirroring of those two dynamics. And I want to go watch Wall Street so I can kind of further dig into this idea and how this all plays.
This is Charlie Sheen. First off, the lead performances are fantastic. Supporting performances are pretty good too.
They're really
the lead performances, Willem Dafoe, Tom Berenger, Charlie Sheen, they are absolutely fantastic and spectacular in this movie. And they're like, obviously this picture is very telling. I would imagine it was a picture they put out for marketing purposes, but one's on the right, one's on the left, and Chris is in the middle trying to navigate what his morals are, where he stands on certain things. It doesn't pull any punches. It's one of those movies that's it's a best picture that is difficult to watch. Like some of the stuff you're just like sitting there going, I believe this probably happened, and I'm very sad that it happened for humanity. Right?
The whole village sequence.
The whole village sequence is a fucking it's a brutal sequence. It's like Chris loses it for a second, then gets it back. You know what I mean? He's yelling at the kid who's clearly challenged.
Yeah.
He's
So
got one leg, and then he gets it back, and then he's able to try to like navigate like the rest of them.
as I was getting ready to watch that scene, and like Rich, I have not watched this film since I was a kid, so I was coming in pretty fresh on it myself. My friend looked at me and goes, "Get ready, this whole sequence is rough."
This whole sequence is brutal.
And you know what I did?
Mhm.
I shut it off. Not the movie, my emotions. I
Yeah.
completely dissociated and just watched it as it is. Not because I was told, "Hey, this section is rough." But I'm going to be honest with you and with everyone watching. I grew up in a military family. My grandfather is Air Force. I have two aunts. One is Air Force, one is Army. My father was Air Force. My husband was a captain in the Army. I grew up around this, and as for my father and my grandfather, they they didn't even spoon feed it to me. What they did was they held my mouth open and said, "You are going to watch every fucking war movie known to man as a child with me." That's all they would watch. It's all they cared about. And because of that, I have a great I despise the genre. I will watch them if I need to, particularly if they are up for Best Picture, but I steer clear of this genre. I have seen every single movie that has been spoken about here, including Hamburger Hill, which is amazing. But I have this. So
I find that.
Hmm?
I'm sorry. I find that interesting because my grandfather served in World War II. Worked with military intelligence. Might have been at the invasion of Anzio a few days before the invasion actually started. And was wounded. Had the hospital ship he was on shot out from under him by a German U-boat. Purple Heart, Bronze Star, and he never watched a war movie, as far as I know. The only thing related to the war that he would ever watch was reruns of Hogan's Heroes.
Nope.
That's what I was going to say.
Nazis. I'm sorry. I did. I just find that interesting that
but I think it's one of the two
severe night terrors when he would have dreams about that time. So I find it interesting.
One of the two ways
other people wanted to watch movies, like I think JW was saying there, that they're trying to
there's one of two ways to deal with the processing of war thing. And my grandparents, both my grandfathers served in the war. A lot of my uncles, they chose to not watch anything to do with war. Like they liked Star Trek.
My father was Vietnam.
Yeah, so I think both my uncles were. All three of my uncles were. But they didn't ever want to watch. Like every once in a while, they would call my dad and say, "Hey, this movie is close." Like that was the thing. That was the interesting thing with dealing with my dad. My dad would ask them which movies got it right because he didn't serve. So he was in the Navy for a few months, but then I think he got sick or something. I had to come out. But he was always intrigued that they would call him and say, "Hey, this movie gets it right. Hey, this movie." Like the one movie they kept on calling him was when Hamburger Hill came out. They were like, "That's the closest that we've seen." He's like, "Not Platoon." He's like, "They're not Platoon," because I think that is one of the controversies about the movie, right? The idea that we have to talk about, the idea that African Americans are not portrayed in the best light in this movie, even though it's put off as a class system movie, right? That is one of the criticisms of the movie. There are many criticisms about how the black people are portrayed in this movie, right? And I think that's one of the things my uncle said to my dad at one point. They were like, "It's got some things right. It's got some things amazingly right, like the digging the holes and like just how the heat and like the sweat and all this different stuff." He goes, "But what they didn't get right was like we weren't out to get African Americans. We weren't like it was much more camaraderie, and not everybody did dope. Like they were adamant about that. Like how in the 70s and 80s when like parents, grandparents, uncles were like, no weed, right? Like, beer, sure, booze. But I think one of the things that they were like, that they were very much opposed to, and I think a lot of them in my family, like Rich's family, I want nothing to do with it. I want to watch some golf. I want to watch Star Trek. I want nothing to do with it. Now, World War II is different. Like, they love the historical stuff, but this movie was a lot for a lot of my uncles. I had 6 of them. For a lot of them, this movie was way too difficult to process.
I had it all just.
You sound like you were like in a chair, locked in a chair.
It felt a lot of times like the scene from Clockwork Orange.
I was just gonna make that reference.
It's exactly what it felt like, because I started getting these things forced to me at the age of 3 because my first fucking film of all time was Saving Private Ryan.
Wow, that's wild. We're old.
I grew up watching a lot of these movies, and I'm surprised I don't have my own PTSD night terrors that are, like, it's like secondhand smoke. It's just secondhand PTSD from freaking war movies.
I think the other thing that
I guess I realized I chose this movie for.
Yes, you chose it. We had nothing to do with this.
There is a reason.
There's a method to your madness. Your PTSD
there's a method to my madness at the end of this curation. We will discuss.
I think I think the movie is actually really well done. Cinematography is great. Editing is really good. Cutting between sequences is really amazing. I usually view narration, first person narration, as a tragic stunt / crutch, because but here it reads like somebody reading like a Civil War letter. You know what I mean? Like,
it does have a Ken Burns feel to it. Yeah,
it has a Ken Burns feel to it. And
for me, it feels like the narration feels like you're telling a story to someone, and you're reliving that story without having to fucking bookend it like it's a musical biopic.
I think the sequences in the jungle are pretty amazing. The shot on location in the Philippines, firefights are terrifying. Everything about the movie, there's a terrifying sense of death in the corner, where you're just like, the people get so apathetic. You were talking about apathy earlier. They get so apathetic to death. It's just like, when a new person shows up, they're like, oh, that person's going to die. That guy's not going to make it. It's like, holy shit. Right? And the first thing... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I appreciate the morality of this particular film. And one of the things of why I have to be apathetic while watching war movies, apart from that, is the morality catch-22. Which... in this, you see cut straight down the center, and then you've got someone in the middle who's being played as tug of war.
Right, representation of 2 characters, right? Elias and Barnes are literally Satan and God on either side of Chris.
Yeah, but the catch-22, oftentimes, that is shown in film is you have one person who is going to uphold their morals and beyond anything possibly get killed for it. So you look at him like, I'm very, very proud of you that you stuck by your morality, but you're a dumbass because you got killed for it. And
there's a detachment, right? Narrators.
And then there's the other side of the coin of someone who may be moral, but is a soldier at the end of the day and is going to follow orders or whatever it is. And so you look at them and you're like, well, good on you for being moral. But at the exact same time, the Nazis, a lot of them were just following orders. They don't, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't situation.
I think what happens in a lot of these movies, and it's not certainly in this one, there is a dark gallows humor satire to it, right? It becomes, when you're saying catch-22, I was immediately thinking of like catch-22. But like the idea that it becomes this dark satire where death kind of becomes like a humorous, like, just we're all headed to the gallows kind of thing. And like you make jokes about people dying, you make jokes to try to make it easier on yourself. This movie doesn't have that quality. Like I was thinking about like Apocalypse Now has a certain level of
Oh yeah,
to it, you know.
even straight down to the I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Exactly.
It's
The Deer
fucking
Hunter,
hilarious.
the Deer Hunter, even in the Deer Hunter with its, you know, its Russian roulette sequence, even there's a gallows humor to it that allows the audience to breathe.
I actually remember from that movie. I haven't watched it in a
But
long
they allow the audience to breathe. And what I think happens with this movie, for both of you, I want, you know, an idea. They don't allow the audience is never given room to properly function, right? You're witnessing things are hitting you as you're watching it for 2 hours, and you don't ever get the breath, right? The idea that you go, I don't know what I would do in this situation, right? You never get that moment because the movie is so visceral and so in your face.
And also, really
okay.
quickly, I would like to make a remark here. I also think that this film, obviously we know that Tropic Thunder was influenced by a lot of the Vietnam War movies, from Deer Hunter to Apocalypse Now. To this movie in particular feels like the greatest influence for it, particularly down to Keith David's performance. I can definitely see a lot of where
you have forgotten how this show works, young lady. Look what the next banner is. We'll get there. We will get there.
I leave for 3 months and I completely forget everything. Like I got back from Paris and forgot how to drive a car.
Okay, I was gonna say we use Rotten Tomatoes, a good aggregate. It is sitting at a whopping 89% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, 93% from people. It had a lot of great reviews. Although, again, my favorites are the ones that are a little bit off, right? Just a little bit. Pauline Kael had a great review, and Pauline Kael, as we're doing this show, Rich, I find her fascinating in every way because she watches movies that you and I and Natasha have experienced and love, and finds a way, just a subtle way, to just go, is it perfect? Is it really super great, or can I put a slight wedge in your thinking? Listen to this review. Listen to this piece of review. And so first off, Roger Ebert, 4 stars, called it the best film of the year, called it the 9th best film of the 80s. Siskel also gave it 4 out of 4 stars. It got great reviews from Vincent Canby and a bunch of other people. Vincent Canby called it the best work about Vietnam ever. But here's what Pauline Kael said, and I love her, Rich, because she's fascinating. The film has been widely acclaimed. And at that point, Rich, when she starts off with, the film has been widely acclaimed.
You feel there's a worm.
Feel it coming. But some may feel that Stone takes too many melodramatic shortcuts, and that there's too much filtered light, too much poetic license, and too much damn romanticized insanity. The movie crowds you. It doesn't leave you room for any honest emotion.
I would agree on that.
It's a very pinpoint review, right? It is, and what Rich and I are discovering is she does it with almost every perfect movie. Like, she finds one little thing where she goes, "Is it great though? Is it perfect? Is it? You know what I mean? Like, and is able to kind of like give you a little bit a different view. And I'm fascinated by her because Rich, she does it with.
There are a few volumes of her critical essays that are out there. I Lost It at the Movies, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and a couple of others. I really need to start tracking them down because I think they're probably really good reads.
She's a voice. She's a unique voice in film critic theory.
Honest, I kind of like that idea. I'm not that I am picking apart all movies, But when someone puts a film up on a pedestal, to actually look at it and try to see it from the view of a skeptic, not that you're particularly looking for
I was going to give you a
that,
compliment, Natasha. I think you do that as well.
oh,
I think you find a way to chisel Rich and I down every once in a while, where I'm just like,
well,
but I like your commentary.
one of my
I respect
favorite moments that I ever discovered, and I'd have to sit down and really rethink about what it was that conversation was, because it was a long time ago, maybe about 2 years ago. I had a great conversation with Rich after seeing Titanic on the big screen.
Oh
and
God, yeah.
and coming back and saying, I really feel bad for the character of Cal. And I had a big,
I remember.
long, I think this thing lasted almost an hour discussion on just a character analysis of Billy Zane's portrayal of Cal. And that is it. And
Were you pro Cal? You were pro Cal, weren't you?
For the first time in my, not usually, but for the first time in my life, I broke down that character portrayal, and along with all the craziness that's going on around it. And I was just like, this character, yeah, he's an asshole, but
you like the bad boys, Natasha. I could see you going.
no, it's not.
I'm pro Thanos.
It's not that I like the bad boys. It is that this character has been wronged. He's actually literally been fucking wronged so many times that at this point, I don't feel bad for him anymore. And I'm not going to get into this because, like I said, that analysis, just telling Rich, was over an hour long. Like that's not.
Yeah, that was.
For this session.
Cal's been wrong, but all those poor people in steerage, they're the fuckers.
I'm talking just about the main plot story.
I know. I'm just playing with you because it's a funny thing. But so this movie's widely acclaimed. Natasha, quick.
Yeah.
What movie or legacy or franchise thing did this inspire? Quick. Go ahead.
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, excellent. I could see Tropic Thunder being that. I could also see Downey Jr. With the character actor thing, playing the African American character, playing, whatever.
So I could cute, David.
I think the other legacy, like this movie, kind of like takes the wheels off with regards to allowing other movies to get grittier, right, and also allowing other movies. We're still going to have movies that have a satirical side, like Full Metal Jacket or, whatever. But this allows for, once this movie gets made, you have other things coming out that are critical, and actually the Department of Defense does support, which I found to be a really interesting kind of like, even though things get difficult for the Department of Defense, defending the war, whatever. This movie causes, when people ask, well, why didn't you support this movie? I'm like, well, we didn't do, and it became a thing where other movies got supported because this movie didn't get supported, right? So like that's
because this movie wasn't supported and was as popular and as well received as it was.
Right. So that causes the Department of Defense to rethink their whole thing. It's a weird legacy for this movie, but it's an important one.
If this movie had fallen apart, they would have stood behind it and said, well,
it would have been like, that's good. I'm so glad it fell apart.
That's why I didn't support it. And now it's like, oh, fuck, we didn't support it. Now we got to cover our ass.
Whoops. Obviously, also, Oliver Stone, I'm going to say this with the best possible intentions. Oliver Stone never gets as good as this. So one of the legacies is this is one of those movies where maybe Born on the 4th of July, right? Maybe. But it doesn't get as gritty, as visceral as this movie. And the rest of the movies he makes tend to have
flaws.
No, it's more than flaws. It's how do I put this? it's very after this movie. Oliver Stone becomes somebody who can't sit in a room with who doesn't like the smell of his own farts. You know what I mean? Like he becomes this filmmaker that is very
You feel he's bought into his own hype,
his own brand, and I think that happens.
Mm.
And while he has good movies here or there, nothing is as honest and real as this one, right? Nothing.
Oh my God.
What?
I just realized I'm looking at his filmography, like his entire filmography. I'm not even just talking like the things he's directed. I mean, produced and written as well. The only things of his that I have seen are Scarface, Platoon, and Alexander. That is it. I'm
going to be honest, Rich. I've probably seen all his stuff, but I don't think he ever gets like. Let me look at it. Let's go through it. Ready?
I would say all of his 80s and 90s output is worth seeing, even if he does come off a lot of times in interviews and stuff as very self-important. Honestly, as much as I thought JFK was a masterwork of craftsmanship, he also was super insufferable around that time. And that's why, like, even on the Ben Stiller show, they would mock him with that whole bit about Oliver Stone's Conspiracy Land theme park.
Well, yeah, okay, so you're right. 80s output, definitely, right? So 80s output, you have, I mean, he wrote Scarface, helped write Conan, wrote Midnight Express, wrote Year of the Dragon, which is a great movie. Really good movie, actually. Underrated Mickey Rourke. Salvador's pretty good. 8 Million Ways to Die is okay, not particularly great. Platoon's pretty great. Wall Street's good. Talk Radio's not. Born on the 4th of July is good. Then you get into like producing. You start Blue Steel, Reversal of Fortune. Then he makes The Doors, which is
I've heard that's good.
It's self-indulgent. It's The Doors is as self-indulgent as any filmmaker can. In my opinion,
I'm not a big fan of The Doors as a band. I felt sometimes Morrison would be a little self-indulgent. So maybe
that
Oliver Stone was the exact right director for this movie.
Perfect parent. Other things from the 90s. He, of course, he produces a lot of stuff, but South Central and Zebrahead, Joy Luck Club, Heaven and Earth, which is another Vietnam movie. Then in 94, he does Natural Born Killers, which again, for me, is self-aggrandizement. Then he does Nixon. He's an executive producer on People vs. Larry Flint. He writes Evita. You know what I mean? Like, Any Given Sunday is a mess. Like, once you hit the mid-90s, late 90s, he starts believing his own, like Oliver Stone is Oliver Stone, like you were saying, like Conspiracy Land, and just crazy shit.
Very political. I'm looking at his entire filmography, and the majority of it is very political.
And he's lost it.
That's his brand.
World Trade Center, Alexander, W, South of the Border, Wall Street Money Never Sleeps, Savages, which I remember people being so angry coming out of Savages because of the fake ending.
And then Snowden was his last feature.
Yeah.
That he directed. And he did a couple documentaries after that, but that no one
saw.
But
it's a weird, like, I think this is his best work. He's one of the rare filmmakers where you look at it and you go, his first movie was, like Orson Welles-ish.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a very weird legacy. You know what I mean? But the legacy is impressive. I will say the funniest legacy piece I read about today, and you guys will get a kick out of this, and this is a true thing. There is a Platoon game from Data East where you run around shooting people.
A video game based off of Platoon.
There's 2 video games based off Platoon. One from '87. That was like Data East, which is like the same video game company that did RoboCop in arcades.
How do you
There
score
are video
war
games
properties?
based off of Platoon.
Yes, and then there's another one in 2002, which is Platoon, the first airborne cavalry division in Vietnam, a real-time strategy game for Microsoft Windows, based on the film. So the two funniest legacy things for me are we have people somewhere playing a Platoon video game and just going, hey, I think that's a good idea. Don't ask me. I think that's a perfect place to stop.
Remember, we got Rambo. Yeah, we got Saturday morning cartoons based on
cartoon.
Rambo.
We did.
So
wait, what?
We had a Rambo cartoon. That's true. We also had a cartoon, and Rich, I know, remembers this. We had a cartoon. I was a huge Bo Jackson fan. We had a cartoon show where Bo Jackson, Wayne Gretzky, and Michael Jordan were super spies who would go around the world and play sports and also save the world. It was amazing. It's such a bad show.
Somebody's still processing Rambo the cartoon.
I'm still processing Platoon the video game.
Well, and that's a perfect place to stop. Processing Platoon the video game.
Please.
Okay, so let's do this. Last two comments of the night. You don't like natural born killers? No, I don't like natural born killers.
Don't worry, Raven. I'll make him watch it, and we'll do it on an upcoming episode at some point.
Fuck off! That movie. That movie drives me bonkers. And also, so late to the party. Hi, Raven. Thanks for coming. 70s and 80s morning cartoons were laughing my fucking ass off. They were amazing. They were so bad. They're actually, you can go on YouTube now, just for anybody who's listening. You can go on YouTube and you can watch whole blocks of like CBS Saturday morning. It has 3-hour blocks of just what you would get as a child. And
cartoons
some of the stuff is
sugary
so
cereal ads.
Fucking crazy. The ads are fucking insane. I watched a commercial. There was a commercial I put up the other day where a clown is selling cereal and he comes through the fucking set and it's like, holy shit, Pennywise's grandfather. And this was like marketed to kids. Like, holy fuck, that clown is scary. You don't know what's in the cereal. Okay. Natasha, where can first off, if you like the show, folks, please like and subscribe down the bottom. Indiescape Network on YouTube.
Oh, by
Facebook.
the way, we all need to be water walkers. Rich just was being Rich. Scrub the jungle. No one called out the Scrubs character who was actually really.
Oh, John C. McGinley.
I'm sorry, Natasha. At this moment,
a really nice guy.
When we're watching this very serious movie, I was thinking to myself, we all need to be water walkers in this day and age. Right now, we all need to be. But anyway,
and Johnny Depp.
Quick John C. McGinley story. I was doing the press roundtables for Stan versus Evil, the IFC series created by Dana Gould. That was kind of like the horror spoof, where he plays like Stan, this guy who becomes like this town's defender against evil monsters. And somebody at the round table asked him what movie scared him the most. And he said, Wait Till Dark with Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I immediately turned to him and I go, hard to believe Alan Arkin couldn't get an Academy Award nomination for basically being mean to the nicest woman in Hollywood.
That's Jesus.
And he's like, yeah, no one's giving you awards for being mean to Audrey Hepburn.
If you want excellent stories like that, like and subscribe on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Natasha, where can people find you, what you're doing, what's going on?
All right, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at NATASHA BOGUTZKI. I am currently doing nothing right now. I need a break.
Congrats.
Pillow Man was too much.
Congrats.
Just the right amount of.
I thought you were, as a producer, just entering into pre-production on something, but okay.
Well, we haven't had a chance to actually sit down and discuss that. So
I know we got to figure out
I'm
when
not
we're going to
I
start.
hate
this.
it. Listen, I hate it
in
when
production on jack shit yet.
I hate when mom and dad fight. Rich, what do you got going on? And where can people
Oh boy,
find
what
you?
don't I have going on? All of my writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com, including tomorrow morning. I'm going to drop my review of The Studio. Wednesday night or Thursday morning, I will have a review of The Day the Earth Blew Up, the new Looney Tunes animated feature, which I'm kind of meh on.
It'd be really great if they had like another like movie starring Looney Tunes that was like good.
I know. Don't get me started.
Let's not talk about that because we already brought it up.
And of course, every Friday we drop the latest in our installment of that's looking at the history of Saturday Night Live and all its many exciting facets, called SNL at 50. That's all at Film Buff Online. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky at Film Buff Online. I'm sorry, only Twitter and Facebook. Our Facebook page also has a lot of fun history things, breaking news, things like that. Personally, you can follow me on the Twitter or at Blue Sky at Film Buff Rich.
You got to find a way to shorten that down.
You can.
That was the short version.
That is the short version. That is his director's cut. Anyway, you can find me, JW the Movie Guy, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, IMDb, JW the Movie Guy, all over, anywhere you want to look. I also do an incredible show on this network tomorrow night, 9 p.m. We will be doing Loud Nerdy. We'll be talking about Mickey 17 and a couple other things that are happening in the world. Thank you for watching tonight, including we're definitely gonna be talking about Daredevil. So
gonna pimp out what's happening. Oh, by the way, Daredevil's fantastic. I've seen all 9 episodes of that. It's really good, and I can't wait for people to get.
Is Marvel
to the end of the season.
Marvel's still dead? No, Marvel's still dead.
No, Marvel's very much alive.
Shocking that Marvel's alive going into May, when I said it was going to be alive, and people were going to be going, "I'm sorry, I said something bad about Marvel." You can also find me Loud Nerdy on Tuesday nights at 9. Thank you for joining us tonight. Everybody have a great week.
Whoa! You gotta pump the next one.
What
and
next?
Also,
What
if,
next?
if
Wait,
you
are you doing it? Go ahead.
If you haven't seen Platoon in forever, Shout Factory has a great disc out of it right now with 2 different commentary tracks, one from Oliver Stone and one from Dale Dye, the military advisor. I listened to part of his soundtrack commentary track earlier today. It's really informative and well worth your time.
Also, if you don't want to buy that disc and you just want to watch the movie for free, it's on Tubi. It's shocking enough you can get it for free. Natasha, are you coming back next week?
Of course I'm coming back next week.
What movie are you talking about, Natasha?
Oh, my.
We got Gwyneth Paltrow, 1996 Emma, one of the Miramax Jane Austen movies, directed by and written by Douglas McGrath. Gwyneth Paltrow, Toni Collette, Alan Cumming, Ewan McGregor, Jeremy Northam, Greta Scacchi. Oh, I love that.
That's a great cast.
Polly Walker. That will be next week on Generation Movie as Natasha curates whatever the hell's going on in her head. Thank you for joining us tonight. Everybody have a great week. We'll see everybody next week. New movie this week, Novocaine. Who the fuck knows if it's going to do well or not.